Hey guys, it's ItsSMOGONdevo. Today we're actually going to do something a little different. I was just sitting here doing some editing on some practice videos. Getting a little exhausted doing it. It's a lot of same old kind of copy and paste type work, so I wanted to take a break. So I decided that I would just try to do a hypothetical team composition just to have some fun with the current meta, with Wigglytuff now entering it. I was just going to do it in my spare time, but I figured, you know what, why don't I actually record this? And then maybe I can give you guys some insight into team building on your own. Yeah, so why don't I set this up with the basis of the team that I wanted to start with. Alright, yeah, so I was actually going through a bunch of old practice videos and I stumbled across the Lantern portion. And you know, I actually started to miss it just looking back at those videos. And I think especially now, given the Wigglytuff rise as well as like Magneton and Fort, it might even have a better place to shine. That's not even counting Venomoth as well, which is something Lantern's able to handle quite easily. So I really wanted to bring Lantern, and I was looking at my old practice videos and seeing the Beedrill as well. And I kind of miss Vigoroth too. I used to love it when I ran it. I just ended up dropping it because I preferred Vespiquen for a Vigoroth counter. But now with Wigglytuffs running around, Vigoroth seems even better to me. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep it, but I also want to try to fit Wigglytuff into this 6 as well. Alright, well, any Jungle Cup team is going to obviously require Vigoroth, so I'm just going to kind of slot him in here. Don't really think I need to explain that choice too much. Alright, so now that we have 4 members, the first thing we should do is just kind of evaluate our weaknesses. One thing I like to do is I like to kind of go through a list of all the relevant mon one at a time, and then just kind of see where I'm weak, just looking at that list. So for Vig, it looks like I'm alright right now, because I have Beedrill, Wigglytuff, and the Mirror, with Lantern being my only weakness. I'm pretty good versus Noctowl right now, with Beedrill being the only actual weakness. I'm not even horrible versus Wigglytuff. I mean, like I have Beedrill, Lantern's kind of a close win, and the Mirror. So I'm alright versus Wigglytuff, could use some work there. What I do notice, however, is that I'm pretty weak to Venusaur right now. So usually on a team in Jungle Cup, you're going to want to run either Noctowl or Fortress. And either one is going to help me out with that Venusaur weakness. So I know for sure I'm going to be going with one of those next. So there's a few other things I have to consider when I'm actually deciding between these two. One thing to look at is your, your own Fortress matchup. If you're kind of weak to it, you're obviously not going to want to pick it up over Noctowl. Another thing you can evaluate is exactly how weak you are to something like Magneton and also what was it? And also Beedrill itself, and to a degree Venomoth. And just looking at this team, you know, I feel like I'm pretty well off versus Noctowl because I have a Lantern, Wigglytuff, and Vigoroth. But what is kind of shaky for me is my own Beedrill matchup. I mean, Wigglytuff is a loss, Vigoroth is a loss, Lantern can be a loss, and I have the Mirror. So this is a pretty important part of my process. Because of that, right now, I am leaning towards Fortress over Noctowl. Depending on my 6th slot, that preference could change. But just given that Beedrill matchup, I do want to improve it as much as possible and actually pick up Fortress right now. So with this 5, there's actually quite a few glaring weaknesses. For starters, my Vigoroth matchup isn't the greatest. I mean, I have Beedrill and Wigglytuff and the Mirror. Lantern and Fortress will lose. Wigglytuff is kind of close. Beedrill's nice, but it's not exactly like the greatest matchup. It's pretty good, but could use work. Also, I'm pretty weak versus Lantern itself. I mean, I have Beedrill, which is a toss-up. I have the Mirror, and I have Vigoroth. So I'm pretty weak to Lantern as well. Venomoth, I mean, I have Lantern and Fortress, And you know, Wiggs and Vig can kind of hold themselves off versus it, but it is kind of a weakness on my team. And another thing is Venusaur. Right now I have 2 great answers for it, but I also have 3 weaknesses to it. So I have to figure out a way around all of those, and that's going to be really tough. So this is sort of where I ended up. Relying on the Venusaur mirror here. I needed Venusaur itself to actually take on Lantern and give me a better Vigoroth matchup. The price I pay is I'm still a little weak to Venusaur and definitely kind of weak to Venomoth. So yeah, sometimes it is kind of difficult to start with 3 Mon you want to run, because you will often find yourself running into issues depending on what the 3 are. But it is a very important step in the process to, once you've actually reached this point where you've figured out 6 you like, take a look at it, step back and actually kind of figure out what you're weak to and whether or not those are things you can kind of play around. So right now I should be looking specifically at my Venusaur matchup and my Venomoth matchup and just making sure that these weaknesses are not completely overblown, and also try to double check to see if there's any minor switches I can make to improve those matchups. So my Venomoth matchup's a little bit worse than I actually thought. I mean, I have basically Fortress, and then everything else can lose. Wigglytuff can win in the 2 shields, Lantern barely wins to triple Poison Fang. So my matchup's looking quite shaky. I'm still a little weak to Venusaur too, although I do have 2 very strong answers to it, Fortress and Beedrill. So that's not my highest priority, but upon closer investigation, I noticed that I'm extremely weak to Beedrill. I mean, all I really have for it is Fortress. So I do have to make a change. But there is something I have in mind that can actually help me with all 3 of those things. Venusaur, Beedrill, as well as Venomoth. And yeah, that would definitely have to be Magnezone. It's going to help me out with Venomoth to around the same, but actually a little bit better than Lantern, as long as it can avoid that Silver Wind. Triple Poison Fang is not going to help out Venomoth versus Magnezone, so that's great. With the Steel typing, it's going to help me out versus Beedrill as well. And for Venusaur, this is also one reason why I kind of chose it over Magneton. But for Venusaur, provided that I can find one with the correct IVs, I can actually just double Flash Cannon to beat Venusaur in the 1 shield. So Magnezone fills a lot of those holes quite well. So now that we've made kind of this last minute change, we have a second to just sit back and look at the team again and just go through the list to make sure that we're actually not too weak to anything in the meta. So first things first, we're going to check our Vigoroth matchup. I have Beedrill, Wigglytuff, Venusaur, and the Mirror with only 2 true weaknesses, although Fortress can hold its own. So I feel okay versus Vigoroth. As for Noctowl, I do have Wigglytuff, Vigoroth, and Magnezone. Fortress can hold its own in a sticky situation, and Beedrill has the Sludge Bomb to threaten it. Now if we check out Wigglytuff, I know for sure I'm extremely balanced versus Wigglytuff. I mean, I have Beedrill, Fortress, Magnezone, and Venusaur, and the Mirror, so it's going to be really hard for people to bring in Wigglytuff versus me. So that's pretty much like the core, or at least like the 3 main pillars of the meta I check first, and then from there I start to check, you know, things that aren't as, I guess, I don't know what the word is, but I tend to check the like 2nd tier options. So the first of those things to check, probably the most important, is Fortress. So I actually am a little bit weak to Fortress. Right now all I really have for it is Magnezone and Vigoroth in the Mirror. It's going to be able to put in a considerable amount of work on my team. So here we're going to go back to one of those first things I looked at, and it looks like we actually have to drop 4 for Noctowl at this point. Alright, yeah, that looks a little bit better. It doesn't really impair my Vigoroth matchup. Doesn't really mess around with my Noctowl matchup. I still have 3 solid options and the Mirror. But yeah. Oh yeah, and I'm still very good versus Wigglytuff. I still have 3 solid options for it. With Fort out of the way, I want to go back and look at Venomoth and Beedrill. For Beedrill, I have the Zone and Noctowl, so it's still a little weak to Beedrill. Vigoroth might be able to pull off some sort of a Hail Mary versus Beedrill, but there is definitely a weakness there. For Venomoth, I mean, I have Wigglytuff and the 2 shields. Vigoroth might be able to pull off magic as well, and then I have Noctowl and Magnezone again. So a little weak to them, and that's kind of why I wanted Fortress initially. So right now it's looking like I have a choice to make. I can keep the Noctowl and maintain my better Fortress matchup at the expense of being weak to Beedrill or Venomoth. Or I can go back to Fort, accept the weakness, and then try to play around it with an improved matchup versus Beedrill and Venomoth. Actually, that's not completely truthful. There is one other option I can take. I can choose to drop something else to improve my matchup to both Venomoth and Beedrill. So essentially what I'm asking myself is, how much do I really want to run that Beedrill? If I really want to run it, then I'm going to have to kind of make that compromise with Fortress or Noctowl, like I was just saying. But if I'm willing to drop it, then I can possibly gain a bit better coverage elsewhere. You know, it's funny, this is actually basically the team I'm running right now, with the exception of Magneton over Magnezone. I guess if you want to create a balanced lineup, you do have to sacrifice things, right? I mean, I definitely could have tried to make Lantern work, or I definitely could have tried to make the Beedrill work here as well, but if you want to do it, you have to make certain sacrifices. This is a cup where I feel like there are a lot of ways to make your team weak, so it's very hard to make a balanced lineup. Usually, if I'm being quite honest, every team is going to have at least one weakness. That doesn't mean your team is bad. I mean, you're just going to have to learn to play around it. Man, this is actually hilarious. I had no intention of ending up this way, and I really did mean to just stick with that Lantern and Beedrill together, but this is the outcome I ended up with. I guess I just wanted to hang on to Wigglytuff a bit too much, but yeah, Jungle Cup's just one of those cups where it's almost impossible to make your team balanced versus the entire meta. There's just so many things you have to answer for, so it's okay if you're weak to something in particular, as long as you are aware of it and you know how to play around it. That being said, I think this is probably my best shot at a balanced team. I'm sure it has a major weakness somewhere, and I'm actually going to just try to look at it for a second and figure that out. Yeah, so looking at it again, I guess like there's 2 bigger holes in my team. Not huge, but one of them is Lantern. I mean, I have Venusaur and Vigoroth there. Those are solid answers. And then I'm weak pretty much 4 ways around with Magnezone, Noctowl, Venomoth, and Wigglytuff. I mean, Wigglytuff and Venomoth get it pretty low if we're being honest. But that is one reason why I actually am running Magneton over the Magnezone, just because I prefer it in the mid to late game a bit more versus Lantern. But that change is kind of unnecessary, to be honest, because I don't really feel that weak to Lantern as is. Again, Wigglytuff and Venomoth can get pretty close with it in the 1 shield. The other thing though that I do notice is I am a little weak to Venusaur. Right now I have Noctowl and Venomoth for it. Then I'm weak basically 2 ways around with Wigglytuff and Vigoroth. I do have Magnezone with that double flash cannon option or the bait, so it's not as bad, but I'm personally running Magneton, so the weakness is a bit worse. Yeah, so I'm a little weak to Venusaur here. Actually, you know, not really. I guess I have Venomoth, Noctowl, and Magnezone as coverage options. Then I have the Mirror, and Vigoroth can pull some Hail Mary stuff with these body slams. So, you know, I'm not even actually that weak to Venusaur if I run it with Magnezone. Really, it's just that Lantern weakness is probably the biggest hole, but again, Venusaur is a really good response to it. Vigoroth is a great response. If Magnezone gets a wild charge, it's not going to look pretty, and Venomoth and Wigglytuff get it really low, so Yeah, you know, I'm pretty satisfied with this team. It feels like it's probably the most balanced team I could conjure up. Actually, let me just double check Venomoth. So I've got Magnezone, Noctowl. Ooh, I'm a little weak to Venomoth. Venusaur is going down, but I mean Wigglytuff and Vigoroth can kind of play around Venomoth, because Wigglytuff can win in the 2 shields, and again, if Vigoroth has the opportunity to get that energy, those body slams are just going to pummel down that that Venomoth. So yeah, a little weak to Venomoth and a little weak to Lantern. But yeah, I still feel really good versus this team. I think it's one of the most balanced, if not the most balanced teams you can make right now in the Jungle Cup. That being said, I am still running the Magneton over Magnezone, but now I'm kind of thinking about going to Magnezone and trying to get a better one. But I just kind of prefer Magneton. It's more my play style, so I'm okay with kind of sacrificing the worst Venusaur matchup for it, because I find myself in situations where I'm able to build up extra energy for those Magnet Bombs anyways, and then just wail on those Venusaurs. So yeah, I guess I inadvertently revealed my actual team to you guys, just trying to go through a basic team building exercise. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this team. I am going to be featuring it relatively soon in my practice battles. It's basically the only thing I'm testing with. I still have to push out all of these other videos for you guys. I'm working on the early practice videos right now. This was sort of my break between trying to finish those. So stay tuned for that. It's definitely coming out. Yeah, just let me know what you guys think about this team. I think I'm actually going to sign off. I don't really think I'm going to include the battles for this. You'll see those in time. Yeah, if you guys liked the video, don't forget to leave a comment. And if you have any other questions about team building or anything else related to Jungle Cup, shoot me a message either on YouTube, or even if you want to do it straight through the Discord server, I'm here to help you guys. Yeah, if you could also leave a like on the video, and if you don't mind, please subscribe to my channel. Really appreciate it. Take care for now, guys.